So a fireside chat from hype to ROI, real-world AI adoption across industries. With us, we're going to have Psalti, who's the director Microsoft AI, and she's coming all the way from Seattle, and then Mats Rydell, who is the co-founder and CEO of Prime.ai. Please welcome them to the stage.
Thank you so much.
All right.
And first of all, I guess, say a bit of thanks to the team for setting this up and for allowing us to be openers here. With me, as it was just presented, I have Eve, who's head of artificial intelligence at Microsoft.
Yes. Hi, Mads. Great to be here. Good to see you.
I think it's kind of like two worlds colliding here.
Yes, for obvious reasons. No, I'm kidding.
You have a business background.
I wear a suit.
You've been working with enterprise. You wear a suit. Yeah, I'm a slacker. And basically, my background is I grew up as a self-taught game developer, and I moved into AI. I was head of product for Siri, and then in the last 10 years or so, I built AI for science and became a B2B provider there, my first sort of B2B play. So I do have some insights and, of course, a lot of preconceptions about business. But I think we can maybe get into some. We're both of European descent. Yes. We both lived on the West Coast for a long time. And we're both, I guess, a little bit senior. We have a time window here that maybe exceeds many of the early founders.
Senior? This is not a great start, isn't it?
No.
Kidding.
Insightful. We're both insightful, hopefully.
We're wise, yes.
Yeah, we're wise. So we have a few different, I think, ways that we would like to triangulate this very broad topic that everyone is talking about. And so I'd like to open with a Microsoft sort of tenet, which is democratizing access to AI. I guess that's what Azure is all about, and giving startups access to really powerful tools from the get-go. And so I was wondering if you could put a little bit of description on how you see what is, like, how does that get concrete? And is maybe standardizations, and is there a lock-in fear with the startups you're working with?
No, you bring up really good points. I think that's definitely an area that, without sounding like an advertising, we really care about the startup ecosystem for many particular reasons. Also from the AI standpoint, we've seen a lot of smaller, more emerging startups leapfrogging when it comes to AI innovation. So we really want to support it with the right tools, with the right developer platform, and everything else. So that's why I'm really, really thrilled to be part of this event here. You also brought up the great point about democratization, which is something that we really, really, truly believe. And it wasn't the case way back in the day. I think Satya was very, very prominent, making sure that our developer platforms, including the AI platform that I'm a part of, is interoperable. So we were the first ones to really strike a collaboration with the Hugging Face team. So we have more than 1,200 of the open source AI models available in the platform. We went and struck collaborations with Meta and the Llama models, Cohere, Mistral here in Europe, and so forth and so on. And we want to make sure that all these tools are also available, especially when we talk about agents, and then I'll shut up, I promise. You really want to make sure that you also have the right orchestration framework. So again, all of the orchestration frameworks that we have are open source as well.
So I think my next question will also be about, what are your strategies for deciding when to open source a particular capability or framework? Because my main concern as a startup founder is ensuring that you can move freely between different options or offerings, that you can swap one model out for another. And I think most people start up like they want to benchmark everything and want to make sure that they can run on several models. But in reality, if you're a startup, you only do what you really, really have to do every week. So no one actually gets the time to set up that framework. So I think if we want true sort of model agnosticism or independence in the startup community, to me, it's really, really important to focus on standardization. Open source is one driver. I guess MCP that everyone's talking about these days is another, maybe the best first example of how to normalize how we interact with models. It used to be that you had to write specific syntax for tools on this model and this model. Examples used to have like special syntax too, and now this normalization across models I think is a huge opportunity. But can you maybe speak to how open source plays into this as well, and what your strategy and how you determine what to open source?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I don't think there is like a specific set of rules. We want to harvest the best of that the ecosystem has to offer, and that was the driver of our initial collaboration with the OpenAI team. We want to make sure that these are available to everyone. To be honest, what I've seen in the past couple of years is that AI models are fairly commoditized. So what you brought up is very right. Like most of the companies, whether it's a startup or a more kind of like, or a larger company, they use an average to 2 to 3 AI models for every kind of use case that they have. And to be honest, like, most of them are doing a great job. Like, yes, of course, you need to evaluate and benchmark and, make sure you're kind of like, doing it in the safest way to avoid any bias or, kind of like ensure the right guardrails. But at the end of the day, I think, the LLM or the AI model is one component. And I think what like really brings it to life is whether you are moving into an agentic AI use case or it's kind of like, whatever you're building.
I think, well, you just touched upon agentic AI, but I think maybe another interesting point that I would like to just circle around to cover is data sovereignty. Microsoft just a couple of weeks ago, we had Brad, your president, visiting Belgium, I think, talking to the EU leadership, and he was very adamant about how Microsoft is supporting data centers that are actually run by European entities and maybe not subject to the same complications that Microsoft data centers might be. But one thing that surprised me a bit was that when I asked into this, it's much more costly. So it could be prohibitively costly for a startup ecosystem to use something that is truly sovereign. Do you have any remarks on that?
It's true. I mean, I think there is a cost of doing business whether you're in Europe or in the US, especially now with the new administration. Things are weird, to say the best. But I think it's all about creating choice. And that's kind of like how we view it, how I view it. We were one of the first to introduce different deployment options, different data residency option. You can, kind of like have the optionality to use something at a global level, at a regional. We also have kind of like, an in-between option as well. At the end of the day, I think you have to make sure you have the right guardrails, but also find the right balance. I'm not sure if there is like a golden rule for moving your data, at the global or keeping it locked in EMEA.
To be honest, I wasn't expecting you to come with a solution. But these are the considerations that are now coming like into full view. It used to be like tinfoil hat territory that we would have an American administration looking into data in the EU. Now that's maybe not as far-fetched as it used to be. But I'm also like, what can you do as Microsoft to ensure a healthy collaboration in such an asymmetrical relationship as an enterprise services company like yourself working with startups? How can you ensure that your like audits or other sort of measures to ensure and to calm down the startup community and allow them to work with an entity such as yours?
Yeah, I mean, the way that I see like my role and my team, which is the AI platform team, is that we develop the tools, and you are the ones that are bringing it to life. So that's why I want to make sure you have different options. These options are interoperable. They work across multiple platforms, multiple things that you might already have. And the magic really comes to life when you have the right use case for the right customer, solving a real issue. So from a kind of like, a provider standpoint, we want to enable everyone. We are kind of like, have a very extensive startup program, starting with a Founders Hub, where everyone can sign up and, they can get access to free credits and, free support and early access to AI models and everything they will need. So we try to kind of like, level the play field to make sure that we invite everyone to, build on the platform that we have.
Well, thank you for that. I completely agree with your sentiment. I think there's really not much else you can do, but I think you're doing the right thing, especially by focusing on open source and by allowing Hugging Face models and pioneering that initiative on your platform. I think that's great. Of course, your competitors are doing similar things. If there was a point of differentiation, I guess against AWS and Google Cloud, what would be the thing you were pointing at? Like for startups choosing between those three major platforms, why would we choose you?
I don't have an opinion about this, to be honest. I'm on the founder side. So I really want to, and I want to invite everyone to challenge the platforms and the tools and what we really have available, because only through this ecosystem and the feedback loop will develop the right things. So I don't know if it was like a way to say I'm not going to answer this question, but I truly believe that I don't want people to come just because of the name or the brand or the collaboration with OpenAI. I want to make sure that they come because we offer top-notch, safe, private, and multiple choice kind of like options.
Thank you. I think that's a wonderful answer. So honestly, everyone has to try for themselves, but I'm glad you believe in your product, so that's good. Maybe zooming out a little bit, we're cutting this session down to 20 minutes in the interest of everyone's time. I would like to hear your angle a little bit about a few things so that people can know who's leading the platform. So for instance, you worked with female founders in your past, and I guess you still do. I also sit on the board of an all-female founder team, so really impressed with the agility that I'm seeing in female founder teams. Can you put a few words on how you think, what kinds of initiative, is there a magic silver bullet that would have great impact on sort of gender equality in the entrepreneurial communities?
Yeah, I'd love to get your opinion on this too, but I really enjoyed the previous panels that were focusing on this matter. The truth of the matter is that there is an inequality when it comes to access to funding. So that's kind of like what drove me to get involved with this organization. It's in the US, but it covers kind of like, global founders. And we wanted to make sure that we level the play field and we provide access to resources, mentoring, and also access to capital. Because I think a lot of, women-centric organizations are focusing on mentoring and training, and I think we've had enough. Yes, we do need this throughout the life cycle of a company, but we also need immediate access to funding, especially now because access to early funding is becoming very scarce, and also because a lot of it is networking, and I think for the longest time, I think maybe men were a little bit better at networking than us. But in any case, it's not about supporting women per se, it's about creating a level playing field. But I wanted to check your opinion too.
So I think in my view, actually, it's not that women are necessarily better. It's just maybe you make fewer dumb mistakes. At least that's what I'm seeing. Women are generally less cocky and less confident, which also makes for, I guess, a worse networker. But it also means challenging your own assumptions. And when I say agility in the female teams I've seen, it is the ability to challenge your own preconceptions and move beyond what you thought just a month ago. And I think that I see that very clearly with the female founder teams that I know.
Great.
So maybe another angle here into where you see the world heading. You've seen, I'm sure, thousands of startups now on your platform. At this point in time, with agentic technologies taking off, what do you think is the best type of startup positioned for success right now? If you were in founder shoes today, what kind of company would you build?
Yeah, I'm not that brave. So I really, really admire the founders because you're all taking a tremendous risk. And I think you have to have that DNA, which I don't think I do, but I admire in others and I want to support in any way. I think I wouldn't say that there is a particular industry or a particular kind of family of use cases that is better than the other. I would say that, I always say that you have to start with the pain first. Identify what is broken, what is costly, what is not automated, what is not optimized, what takes a lot of resources, what is a gap, and then start backwards from there. So the bigger the pain and the more you can hone in a use case that can address that pain and make it a little bit better is probably a successful one.
I also think that that's very, very classical response. And I think what we've seen in the recent years is that when I was on the Siri team, we talked about language interfaces taking over the world, but we actually had no conception of what that might look like. And I think that is what we're starting to see. Language is the king. And more and more use cases are deployable or solvable just through language. And everything is a conversation, really, and every conversation is a chat. So in my opinion, maybe what we're seeing now is chat, or the conversation is eating the world. And when we see OpenAI with their Christmas calendar announcing new features like every day, we're just hearing 1,000 startups die because chat is just eating away at everything.
Yeah.
How do you see that? Is it the end-all, be-all of interfaces talking to our computers?
I mean, you bring up a good example, because I remember that time very vividly, because we ship at the same time as OpenAI, but we also add a bunch of enterprise things and responsible AI things into the code. So for us, it was a nightmare. It was like 12 days of nightmare instead of like 12 days of launch. But yeah, it's all good. Sorry, what was the question?
Is language taking over the world?
Yes. No. Well, I think the evolution of what we are seeing is that, first we had the bot. Everything had a bot. Everything was a virtual assistant of some sort. We and I truly believe that agentic AI is going to be the near future, because it creates kind of like, all the components are mature and in place. So, and I think this provides a really good opportunity for a startup to capitalize on the pieces that we have, because now we have really mature and multi-variety kind of like LLMs. You can have the reasoning ones, great at computational thinking, mathematical problems. You have the multimodal ones. You can interact with images, with video, with audio, very rich. And now you can build an agent. So I think we're moving beyond kind of like the chat and beyond kind of like the LLM, very kind of like bidirectional interaction, into creating actions. And then you connect a bunch of different agents together, and then you have multiple agents. So I think this creates a lot of opportunities for people to take all the components. Like, an agent is a glamorized microservice, right? Which we had. We had the API to API connections for the longest time. Now we have strong LLMs. We have open source and really mature orchestrators. So I think this invites founders to maybe build something like that.
I'm glad you think so, because I'm kind of dubious myself. Is everything going to get eaten by natural language input? I'm sure there's tons of ways you could present data, but in the end, maybe we're just going to want to talk about it with the computer. Who knows? So maybe one final thing here, closing up. We're Europeans of origin. How do we compete with Silicon Valley? We talked about data sovereignty. We talked about the additional cost. There's probably also a VC angle. If you're thinking very Eurocentric, can you even scale globally? Mm-hmm. How do we compete if there's like one final thing that you can get off your chest that's going to help us all?
I don't know that I have the silver bullet, but I'm a hopeful person. I see the glass half full at all times. So I do believe, though, that this is like a great time to be in kind of like and really extend the European ecosystem. And there are a lot of different reasons. I think Europe always had the intellectual capital, right? We have the best universities in the world that are producing graduates, really hungry and energetic graduates every year, right? So the goal is to keep them and create the conditions for them to actually thrive. Then for the longest time, I think, especially in Greece, which I'm originally from, we had a lot of like unnecessary regulations, bureaucracy. It was almost impossible to even consider starting a business. Now I've seen kind of like, and I'm watching it from afar, so I'm not really an expert, but I'm seeing it like, now you have a little bit more business-friendly regulations. That remove some of that friction that we've seen over the years. And the other piece, I think, it's also incentives, right? Can the government, outside of removing the obstacles, can actually take it a step further and create the right incentives for investors and for founders really to stay with it. And the last piece, which is obvious, and I think the previous panel mentioned it as well, is that I think in the US, we're shooting ourselves in the foot because now we don't create the conditions there for Europeans to move and create their companies there. So that's another piece that I think adds to the equation.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Thank you so much for your perspective.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure to get to interview you here.
Thank you. Great
meeting
you.